Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of Drinking from the Fire Hose, or otherwise known as New Faculty Orientation. My name is Jay Call, Assistant Vice Provost for Assessment and Academic Excellence here at Augustana. We are so happy that you showed up for day 2. I hope you took copious notes yesterday. I did send out the links for the videos yesterday, and the captioning should be done, I think, mostly as of this morning. We have every acronym that we could throw at you to talk through today. So we've got folks from SSC, IPO, CTS, FYS. I'm trying to think if we've got anybody from the FBI. I don't think so yet. But essentially, we are going to be talking about different services, and some of them are very timely based on our conversations yesterday. So we've got just about 2 hours, and because you'll see me and because you'll be working with Sharon, the discussion about CTS might be relatively light, but I wanted to make sure that you got to chat with each of these folks as well. For our presenters, I'll give you fair warning. We do, I'll call it an icebreaker as part of this, and I did enable you to be able to screen share as well. So what we will do is, as we did yesterday, is go around the horn, name, department, and today I'd like you to share a teaching moment, either that you were on the receiving end of teaching and or a learning moment as well. I'll share briefly one of mine. A professor that I used to have in the psychology department. So I was a psych and philosophy major. He used to write the tests, and afterwards he would confer with me as to how hard the tests were. And one day I finished a test that he had, and it was like 15 minutes, right? So sorry, it's kind of a humble brag. Anyway, so I finished, I dropped off the test, and before I walked out of the room, he let everybody know that based on how quickly I finished, the next week's test would be much harder. And I got a lot of glares from the class. It certainly didn't help my popularity index. So with that, I will hand it to Tanya first, name, department, and teaching and or learning experience, please.
Well, hi there, I'm Tanya. I'm in the education department. Oh, a teachable moment. Oh, let me think. I can't think of anything yet. Can you come back to me?
Uh-oh, now we're in trouble. That's just fine. Go ahead, Vicki.
I'm Vicki Hennard, and I'm in the education as well as Tanya, and I'm going to cheat because I see Sharon Gray that I've had many learning moments from Sharon, and they occur daily. So I guess the most recent, no, there's just too many to count, but she's my lifeline to the tech, and I'm so grateful for her that I am constantly learning. That's a cheat. I'm going to take it.
That's just fine. You can phone a friend on this one. Go ahead, Sharon, you're next.
All right, so I'm next. So I've got, I was struggling because there are about 3 or 4 that I'd love to share, but I think I'll go with the one that I found really, really works. I have a test. I teach an ethics course. By the way, I'm Sharon Gray. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology. I'm the Moodle and the Canvas admin. And I also teach in the computer science department. So I teach an ethics course, their writing course for the program. And we have chapter tests. And before the chapter test, the students know to get there on time that day, because we sit in the room and it's a free-for-all. Anybody who has a question that they're not quite clear about, they can ask it, and another student has to answer it. And so we have this essentially study session right before the test that helps to clarify things that might be a little bit cloudy, but it depends on the students to do the clarifying. Sometimes if somebody's a little bit, not quite getting it, I'll weigh in, but usually I sit back and let them do that. And I think the students really do appreciate it. It's been a real positive.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sharon. Ashley, you're next.
Oh, and this is Tanya. I thought of one. Okay, Tanya, Ashley says, go ahead. Okay, sorry. Let me think. I just remembered there's two, well, actually one. Okay, when we, Ashley and I were taking a course with Jay, it was CDF, a curriculum design flow, what was it? Something. And I was new to Canvas and I really felt awkward and I was a slow learner. I was very confused and it just, you know, made me feel like, oh my gosh. And I had that moment where I thought, this is exactly how the students are going to be feeling. And so I needed things very simplistic in nature. I needed a lot of repetition and so forth, but that helped me to prepare for the course itself. So I was very blessed to have Ashley, who actually had some experience with Canvas, to help me out. But
Excellent, thank you. And you may have tagged in Ashley on that one too.
yes, this is Ashley. Hi there. I'm with the Ed Department and ASL Interpreting. Let's see, teachable moment. I don't know if I can think of anything. One thing I have learned through CDF, even though I had experience from my prior college in teaching through Canvas, I thought it was going to be no big deal. But thanks to Sharon, thank you for getting me through that process and making sure everything was working all right. And as I did that, it was great because there were a lot of things that I was still learning, and it was a great refresher for me. And like Tanya said, making sure to look at from the student's perspective and how they're going to learn, that you need those details. And so that was one thing that I learned, and I wanted to empower the students so they can work on their own and know all of the features in CDF that you have, like the sign up for the students where they have their own groups that they can do and they can work with people. And I always hated to assign people to groups and then they kind of sit there and then they don't say anything. So it's nice that they can feel comfortable creating those groups and having that support. So that's a feature that I definitely am going to take advantage of this semester to empower the students and give them that motivation to learn. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And of course, other features as well to help the students succeed.
Excellent. Thank you both, and your stipends will now be fast tracked. So thank you. Kevin, you're up next.
Perfect.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Natkunda in the biology department. And I'm from Uganda, which is located in the eastern part of Africa. One of the teaching moments was at Iowa State University when I was teaching a class of seniors, and they were doing independent projects. So for incubating something, trying to design some knockout reagents, and the protocol called for 2 hours of incubation. So we thought every student, since they had 3 hours in class, by the end of the class, they would take out their reagents from the incubator, but accidentally, one student forgot their reagents in the incubator. And so it went for overnight. Apparently, that was a breakthrough because every other student's experiment did not work. And then the student who forgot the experiment in the incubator to incubate overnight, it worked perfectly. And we were trying to do that experiment over and over and over, and everyone's was not working. And so that was a breakthrough. We had to change the protocol for designing CRISPRs, and it's being used by all the universities that actually work on CRISPRs. Instead of incubating for 2 hours, you have to incubate for 16 plus hours. So that was a great teachable moment that I will never forget. Just a mistake turned out to be a breakthrough.
Absolutely. And I'm sure the students and you will never forget that. Beth, you're up next. You're the center square today.
Is that me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Elam. I am the Associate Dean of Students. So I work with our student health and counseling programs. I also oversee our residence hall directors. And then I am the Title IX coordinator for the entire university as well. So I would go with a learning moment. I would say when I first started in this position, so I'm a counselor by nature, so it's easy for me to just shut my door and stay in my office all day. And so my boss at the time said in order for me to be able to do my job well, I had to go out and visit, you know, and he would give me a certain number of people that I would need to visit. And I hated doing that because I'm an introvert and I don't do that well. So, but I did it, and it's really helped me. I've been here 11 years, and the more I get to know other people and what they do, the more that they actually help make my job easier. So that was a huge learning moment that I still do to this day. So
Excellent. Thank you, Beth. Andrea, go ahead.
Hi, Andrea. I'm the Director of Clinical Education in the Doctor of Physical Therapy program. And I would say mine is a kind of learning and teaching moment. So in my last role, we were having to move labs and practical examinations from a physical lab to an online lab setting. And we had to have the students submit recordings, and it was too cumbersome to do live lab practicals for every student. So we had them do recorded questions. And what I was doing was some mock practicals just to have them practice, you know, both the technology and the skills. But they were so worried about these recordings and getting the skills right that they would practice it over and over and over. And this is the best demonstration of these skills that I have seen them put in. So it was like a learning moment for me, a good teachable moment for them, that maybe this was something that I will keep in some of my instruction going forward with some of these mock practicals. And that's not to be scared of doing some of these more online techniques when we think of a really hands-on skill, especially for practice, because they wanted so badly to get full points that, man, I have not seen them perform that well because they practiced it so many times compared to when they are doing an in-person practical. So for some of those learning moments for both of us coming out of the pandemic necessities.
There certainly is an element to the recording of things and the permanency of recordings that raises the anxiety and the stakes to some degree, I say, as we're being recorded.
I think too, they're able to watch themselves and see themselves in a way that they don't get to do when they're just performing for us, you know? So I think that's another good element of feedback that they don't get in a just face-to-face instruction. So.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I think what's interesting is in the last few months, we've seen folks get onto Zoom and they're positioning and getting the light, and I'm guilty of it as well, where I get too much reflection. I'm like, oh, my face is washed out, that people can't see me or they can't hear me very well. And there's all of these adjustments, and that's just to talk like we would do any day of the week. So if I'm, you know, moving somebody's elbow or their wrist or something along those lines, I gotta imagine I'm probably doing that tenfold. So excellent. Ms. Billy, you're up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Billy Struford, and I work in the Student Success Center. That, if you want to place it on campus, is right below the theater in the far northeast corner of the Edith Mortensen Center. So if you picture yourself at the dining hall and you turn around and head straight north, you'll run right into our office. I'm so grateful for all of it. It's fun to hear all of the quality instruction that you provide. Augustana recruits the best, the brightest. So we are excited to get to know you. Both Beth, Ben, and our curriculum is more often delivered individually. And some of the skills that the Success Center teaches are things like metacognition, goal setting, decision making. So the example that I thought of is both teaching and learning, as we often discover as educators. We set out to teach our students, but oftentimes they teach us. Some of my favorite students to teach are the students that are navigating the uncertainty of the future. And I think they stand out to me now more than ever as we in a COVID environment live at that place. And it's been helpful to be reminded that many of our students live there all the time. In particular, the students who have really ambitious goals, goals that may need to be adaptable. So those could be our students who are pursuing competitive admission at the graduate school level, whether that's allied health or pre-med. It's the most frequent and most difficult ethical dilemma that we all encounter in academic advising and in early alert. So my research interests focus on how to teach and how to navigate those ethical dilemmas. But again, I'm continually inspired by our students and learn a lot from them about a spirit of persistence, a spirit of openness and adaptability. So I'm grateful to partner with you as we together instruct those students.
Thank you, Billy. I will do a quick plug. If you ever want to learn more than you may ever need to know about advising and how to support students, one cup of coffee with Billy and you will have a full portfolio of materials, and she'll email you links too. So you'll get a PhD in it in short order. Marty, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Marty Silviti. I'm with the Department of Nursing. And my kind of learning experience came many years ago. I had just started back to school and I was required to take a math course. And I don't even remember the level of math it was, but it was late at night and I ran headlong into a problem. And my teenage son, who is a math brain, was down playing basketball with his buddies in our driveway. And I called him up. I said, I need help with this. And he explained it to me and I said, I don't understand. So he explained it to me a different way and I said, I don't get it. So he tried a third way. I finally figured it out. And I had two takeaways from that. One is he was calm. He wasn't nasty with me. He wasn't like, Mom, I've got to get going. He wasn't in a rush. And two, if you say the same thing over and over, you're still not going to learn it. He did it 3 different ways until I finally understood. And I wasn't even thinking about teaching at that point, but it was such a profound moment that I've really taken that with me as I get into the teaching component of education.
Thank you, Marty. Isn't it amazing when our kids are able to help explain something to us? I say as I was just doing that yesterday with my son. So yeah, excellent.
It is.
Ms. Darcy, you're up.
Hi, everybody. My name is Darcy Reeves East. I'm an associate professor of English and also the director of the FYS program, which is the first year seminar program. And the moment I would share is like what Billy said, both teaching and learning. This also is a plug for IPO because this in January, a colleague from psychology and we led a study abroad to New Zealand, and it was amazing. And a lot of the best learning experiences we had were not necessarily right in the classroom. They were meeting people, like sharing time with a Maori village and canoeing down a river, and it was a great time. And I've just felt like sometimes the most profound experiences for me have been studying abroad. I was there, and then I also was in Australia for a year when I was an undergrad, and those are the moments that just be going out of my comfort zone and seeing what other people do and how they live has been profound. And I always encourage students to go abroad if and when they can. So thanks.
Thank you, Darcy. And consequently, up next is Ben.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for that plug, Darcy. My name is Ben Iverson, and I'm director in the International Programs Office, and I also serve a leadership role in our Enrollment Management Office. So I was going to share an embarrassing study abroad moment, but I changed my mind. And this is a liberal arts institution, so I'm actually going to share a poem with you. So I'll paste. It's short. Don't worry. Maybe some of you have seen this. It's a fairly famous one from Robert Frost. When a friend calls to me from the road and slows his horse to a meaning walk, I don't stand still and look around on all the hills I haven't hoed and shout from where I am, what is it? No, not as there is a time to talk. I thrust my hoe in the mellow ground, blade end up and 5 feet tall, and plod. I go up to the stone wall for a friendly visit. And the reason that I share this is because, and those of you on the call that already know me will laugh at this probably, but I'm a type A kind of personality. I don't like small talk. I don't like icebreakers, Jay Call, although I understand the purpose of them. And my predecessor actually left this for me in the office. I worked with, some people on this call know Don Granager, of course. I don't know if he did that intentionally or if he wasn't the most organized guy. It could have just been an oversight on his part, but that's kind of, therein lies the mystery. I'd like to think he did it intentionally because he knows this is something I personally need to work on. So I have this still posted in my office as a reminder to myself to stop and talk every now and then. Thank
you, Ben. It's too bad you weren't here for our icebreakers yesterday. They were all like binge TV shows and stuff like that. So they were infinitely easier than this morning's, but we all needed to wake up. Anissa, you're up.
Hi, I'm Anissa Gearing in the business department. Mine is, as I was thinking about it, it's kind of a little bit like Darcy's. I was in India in 2009 and I was doing presentations, and they do a ceremony before you present. And for one of my presentations, they forgot to do it. And it was very interesting to me how apologetic they were about, missing that aspect of the ceremony to warm up the room for the presentation. And it just really, for me, it was a big learning moment because I didn't think about that we didn't do it that one time and the profound impact it might have on getting people to participate or just to prime the pump, so to speak. And it really got me thinking about icebreakers and different ways that we start the way that we teach. And there's a lot of talk right now about, if you're online, how to make it more engaging and how to be community oriented. And I always think about how that was and how there was different reactions based on my presentation, based on how the warm-up was. And so I keep that in mind, that even though I may not necessarily want to integrate that into the classroom, it is important. And engaging everybody from not just the educational perspective, but engaging everyone on a personal level is really important, and it does create that community that you're looking for. And for me, I have been told at times that some of my icebreakers are a little kindergartner-ish, but at the same time, they all seem to have a lot of fun. So I'm going to keep doing it and remember why I do it.
I'm starting to wonder if maybe this is a support group for introverts trying to be extroverts, but we'll save that for another session, I think.
Jay, can I add a real quick learning moment that I thought of that I thought would be, it's short, and it's how I got into this field. So I was watching a video disc, and those of you who are my age will know what a video disc is. The rest of you will go, what's a video disc? But it was a precursor to CDs. It was this great big flat panel, and it was teaching physics concepts using amusement park examples. And so, I found that curious, and I was watching, and it was showing the acceleration formula for a car going down a roller coaster. But in the top, the text, the numeral equation, the numeric equation was changing as the car was going down. And a light just went off. I thought, oh my gosh, this is the most awesome thing in the world. I get it. I get it. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to work in a field where I can help people to visualize information, to understand concepts, to use media to try to make things more clear. And so that's what got me into this field. That would have been back in the 80s, I think. Good lands. Oh.
Thank you, Sharon. We are going to start with Billy and the Student Success Center today. Billy, you had a link in the chat that you wanted everybody to take a look at as well, correct?
Yes, so I'm not going to share my screen with the handout. The handout is, Beth and I will collectively make some broad comments, but it's intended to be a desktop reference down the road, knowing that you are drinking from a fire hose. And Jay's comment about acronyms made me smile because we're going to throw a lot more at you. We have between EARS and SOS, lots of other acronyms too. So just knowing that when we all onboard to a new position, it can be information overload. We thought the handout, which again is in the chat, could be a good reference. So feel free to print it out and use it down the road. I'll make some broad comments, and Beth, Beth will, I'm sure, echo some of what we're sharing already. But first, I guess I would, I'll speak to the, before I jump into the how of it, even just the broad structure. We have a shared split advising model. And what that means is you all, not right now, but down the road, you're going to have advisees. We don't do that, typically we don't do that the first semester, just again, knowing your primary objective is to acclimate to Augustana and provide classroom instruction. But we provide supplemental support to advance the teaching of your advising. We don't use the term advisors for, we call the staff CAP specialist, another acronym, career, and that means career and academic planning. But as Beth shared, both Beth and I have a counseling emphasis. We don't expect our faculty advisors to provide counseling. So that's one shared role in that you all are on the front lines, you're engaged in triage, and you can generate a referral to many of the resources that we'll talk about. So as a part of that shared integrated care team, which Ben's staff are also a part of, so we have a core value is community, and we amplify that as a part of student persistence. So we pull together an interdepartmental care team that consists of the Dean of Students, my office, the Success Center, IPO, and the Registrar's Office, just so we can synthesize the information and all that the student is experiencing, so we can see the dashboard and the opportunities that we have to advance both their learning and their global well-being. So that's what the handout, and I'll kind of go through the nuts and bolts. So speaking more specifically about the Success Center, we have two primary objectives. In short, our goal is to help students achieve theirs, and that consists of both academic support and career education. So, and I think you heard from my esteemed colleague, Susan Bees. So I'm not going to talk a lot about accessibility services. She's a great point of contact if a student discloses to you that they have a disability. You may hear from her if a student has already proactively arranged an accommodation plan with Susan, or if you even want to engage in case consultation to where you suspect something is going on, that there are barriers in the environment, but you're not sure what. Feel free to pick up the phone and call me, call Susan. We can, again, leave no stone unturned and just together think critically and conceptualize what might be going on. So accessibility services is one key component of our academic support. The other is tutoring. So here's a couple of things to know about tutoring. And again, all of these links and the point person in my office are listed in this handout. So down the road, if you have questions about tutoring, you'll see, for instance, Tim Holman is the individual listed. There are 5 dedicated staff in my office. They each have a designated department and it's usually by division that they support as far as individual caseload of students. And then they have a specialized function. So for tutoring, for example. Tutoring is provided in any and all departments. We would never want a student to pay for that. And sometimes they do go out just because they're unaware of these resources. We encourage faculty to first talk about academic support universally before it's introduced individually. If the first time we're talking to students about academic support, if they are an underrepresented group and perhaps have internalized some stereotypes, so that could be a student athlete, you know, the dumb jock stereotype is pervasive and there's strong empirical evidence that undermines students' academic identity. I'm a first generation college student. I might have that imposter syndrome that is common. If the first time you are introducing advising is in a one-on-one setting, they might hear you and perceive that you're confirming that imposter syndrome, that you don't think they can do it, when in fact we know every student needs tutoring. So we encourage in your opening class period, talk about academic support, put it in your syllabus. We want to universally introduce this, and we have a pretty aggressive marketing campaign for that reason. We use social norming, so we try to reduce the stigma by saying, so for instance, in the NESE, which we'll hear more about, we learned 78% of our students are using academic support. I know based on our dashboard, 80% of the students who meet with a tutor have a 3.0 or higher. So we have this marketing campaign to, again, just frame this as a part of learning. And we've received great data in the NESE as well about our collaborative learning environment. So the stigma isn't as strong here about tutoring, but I guess I would just call us all, the more we can talk about this collectively, we reduce the stigma and we reduce the risk that we could undermine somebody's sense of confidence. You'll hear more about self-efficacy at the faculty retreat when we talk about that. You'll see the link there, it's just augie.edu tutoring. The way this is working in COVID, we have an online scheduling system, both the Success Center and the Writing Center, so it's integrated and seamless. Students don't have to bounce around between two systems. And in short, it's a schedule of our tutors and their availability. They can jump online, schedule an individual session if they want to pair up with a classmate. And even, we're not encouraging it, can't be more than 2, maybe 3, depending on the tutor's comfortability. But they can jump online, schedule it at their convenience. The tutor will then follow up with them to confirm that. We are leaving it up to the pair of them to decide if it is via Zoom or if they would like to meet face-to-face. They're physically distancing, they're wearing masks, and we've designated spaces around campus, and the tutor will disinfect at the conclusion of the session. So it's prepared for either the next student that wants to study there or perhaps even the next tutoring session. We only hire tutors that you have endorsed. So you may, as an academic department, at some point hear our call. Usually that comes late in the spring semester. If there are any students that approach us and want to tutor, we will ask them to obtain a letter of recommendation, because again, we want to lean in and listen to you all. You know your students and you know your discipline, and you're getting to know them in the classroom. So feel free to nudge any students our way if you think they'd be an exemplary tutor. You'll find in our job description, it's not necessarily always the 4.0 student that makes the best tutor. As you know, it's the student that can empathize with students who perhaps are feeling a bit stuck. So the students who have, again, that growth mindset, that grittiness. So the other, this one isn't an acronym, so that helps. The other resource you may hear about is what are called study cafes. So we do not have, if you, at your last campus or even just your own knowledge nationally, we don't have supplemental instruction here. We kind of have pulled together a hybrid. So if you want to have a structured study session facilitated by a tutor, an academic mentor, and by structured, here's what I mean by that. So with tutoring, the student is bringing the question. They're setting the agenda. With a study cafe, you all set the agenda. So you give the tutor practice test questions, problems to examine together. If you want to host those around exams is usually when our faculty will reach out to us. All you need to do is let us know that you are interested in that. Contact the tutor and arrange the time and just announce it either in Canvas or Moodle or during class. We will do all that we can to support the tutor and arrange that. So a lot of those, that's higher in the natural sciences, math, computer science, biology has hosted a lot of those. And again, those can be timed whenever you would like. And the tutors, by the way, will send you a report, both for individual and study cafes. After they are done, you will, and you'll hear this from the Writing Center too, you will receive a snapshot of what was discussed. We do that, one, so you can know these students are working hard and affirm that effort. Second, because sometimes it could inform your teaching. If the tutor's hearing the same question again and again, it could be something that you discuss as a class. I'm going to pause before we jump into career and EARS, which is our early alert system. Any questions about academic support? Okay, jump in if you have more questions if you come later. So, okay, so I'm going to shift to career education, and then Beth and I will jump into our proactive early alert system. So on the career front, first, 60%, about 60% of our incoming first year students are unsure of their major. So while yes, they may have declared as you are talking to them individually an interest in your discipline, please continue to engage in that clarification and that confirmation with them. If a student is completely unsure or you sense they might be wanting to change their major, feel free to send them our way. We have lots of resources. Yes, that includes career assessments, but we also transcend career assessments. We have a whole individual appointments that they can receive, experiential learning that we will immediately connect them with so they can experience that occupation and get a better understanding. So that could include connecting with an alum. Used to be shadowing an alum. We're struggling with that now, but our alums are still, even in a COVID environment, routinely talking via phone or Zoom with our students. So there are some links on the back of the handout if you want in particular to see some of those resources. Some of that can even be for a lot of your students, my guess is they may know that they love your discipline, but they're not sure what vocationally to do with it. We have some resources to help you with that. So for instance, we have a handout that will showcase what can I do with insert any of our majors, you know, history, English, what else can I do with biology besides the traditional healthcare? I mean, many of our students have limited occupational literacy. So if you have any of those questions, that handout is on that /exploring. It's called What Can I Do with a Major? From an internship experiential learning standpoint, each of your departments has a designated internship coordinator. So at some point this semester or even later this year, it might be helpful to visit with that person to really understand how that is structured for your department. Or if you have a student who is interested in internships, you definitely are going to want to seamlessly connect them to the internship coordinator. Experiential learning is our fourth learning outcome. It is not optional at Augustana. It is essential. We have a motto of service, and we want our students knowing how talented they are, knowing that our community needs their gifts. We want them engaged. And that is one thing distinctive that you'll even hear about down the road with the first year seminar. We introduce them very early to experiential learning. I'm grateful for our faculty that embed it into their classes. I brag about you every chance I get with enrollment when I'm talking with prospective students and families. We are distinctive in that regard. In fact, we've been recognized nationally by Ruffalo No Levitz. It's kind of the Golden Globes of retention because we embark students early in that. And experiential learning is important for so many reasons. So a couple of things to know about jobs and internships. Thank you. I know you're going to be out there networking on our behalf. If you hear about a job, please send it to us. We have a job and internship database. It's called Augie Opportunities. And that link again is there. You could have access to it if you want to. We have other faculty who don't necessarily want to access the system. They just want a copy of our weekly report, and we can add you to that listserv if it interests you. The internship coordinators, for instance, all receive it. We have typically posted more than 2,500 jobs a year. It's, of course, a slowdown, which I'll get to here in a moment with COVID. Please know you are completely able to source talent on behalf of employers. So let's just say somebody approaches you in the community and says, send me your best and brightest. I want you to feel protected and navigate with the institution. So we are a third-party staffing agency as an institution. We are held to state and federal recruitment laws. You can't just send that employer, you can't just, approach one student with that job opportunity. To comply with equal employment opportunity, we need to post it in Augie Opportunities so everyone has equal opportunity and awareness about it. Thereafter, you can absolutely source talent. You're going to want to say to that employer, all of our students are talented. I'm going to post it online for everyone. Let me, after I do that, share a couple of names or applications or whatever you all agree. So please know, you may absolutely work with that employer, connect with them, but we do ask as a courtesy and to align with our most esteemed value of access and inclusion to post it in Augie Opportunities. If you are asked how the employment market looks in COVID, I don't have a crystal ball. I will tell you we have left no stone unturned and are doing, there's a three-pronged approach response across the nation in this regard. First, you could talk to your internship coordinator, and my guess is they are going to tell you ways they have pivoted to alternatives. Vocation takes many forms, experiential learning takes many forms. So many of them, for instance, I'll use business as an example, has deployed a common read where they're reading about leadership and situating it in the COVID environment of what does that look like within the pandemic. So the learning is still there, it's just not occurring, it's not paired perhaps within employment off campus. We are also actively recruiting what are called micro internships. So while employers historically have offered 120 hours, we know that they're probably going to gradually return to internships. So we are getting smaller projects from them. We just last week reached out again to more than 200 employers in town, and we had 4 more within the hour that was sent. So we're seeing encouragement that this is picking up. It'll still likely be slow. And then the third is leveraging campus employment. We have lots of great positions on campus that are equally robust, and we're working with internship coordinators to frame those and celebrate that teaching. We have great outcome data. I imagine at some point you're going to connect with prospective students. I want to help you. What a joy to celebrate the story and the accomplishment of our alumni. So I track that for each academic department, and I'm very transparent in sharing the data. In fact, the next time you're in the portal, the same place, the fact book, all of our assessment institutional data is published. You can see, it'll be nearly, I think it's 5 years now, Excel spreadsheets per academic department. So if you want to arm yourself with examples of where distinguished alums have worked, or even as you start to, as you progress here and have your first graduating class, I'm going to be leveraging again that great rapport you have with students. So I'll circle back to the departments. Usually it's around Thanksgiving when the reporting period is about to close, just to hear. We hear from about 90% of our graduates. So at that point, whoever I haven't heard from, I might just see if you have had any correspondence with them. We follow the gold standard in our methodology. If you're not familiar with it, you can read the report. It's augie.edu/outcomes. I don't know how much you have read about Augustana as you acclimated. We have national distinction in the most robust methodology. And I'm sorry, Jay, I could talk forever about this, but so our career outcome report, like any other institution, is self-reported. And that is just the gold standard. We can get information from LinkedIn, we can get it from you, we can get it from their student, the parent, and it's good information. The best information is to hear right from employers. And the federal government knows people's social security number because they got FAFSA, and they get W-4s. So they're pairing the two and getting very robust information. And Zippia looks at all of this information nationally. So it is benchmarked apples to apples comparison of institutions. We were second in the nation, not just the best in South Dakota, second in the nation for employment rate. And just this week, we're recognized as #1 best small college in the nation. So this is 10 years, I think it's 10 years out. It's not 6 months like my report, but we are so lucky to be in Sioux Falls. For sure, fold into Sioux Falls when you're meeting with prospective students. Our employers are great. You all are phenomenal. So any questions about career before I make a couple of comments about academic interventions, and then I'll pass it to my esteemed colleague, Beth. Okay, I know we're drinking from a fire hose. Here's where some of the acronyms begin. So we have a proactive integrated care team, or if you want to call it again, a shared advising team. Beth and I co-chair what is known as the Early Alert Committee, and that's that interdepartmental group. We want to, especially now more than ever in COVID, lean in and listen and hear and sense distress before, quite frankly, the student even knows that they're distressed, that we're trying to anticipate distress before it escalates to an, hopefully not an uncopable moment, but the earlier we can intervene, the better. So we have built this into the fabric of our institution, and that was also a part of the Ruffalo No Lovitz Award that I mentioned. So there's going to be 3 opportunities, and these are on the handout. The Dean of Students has an early alert referral form, and the website is on the handout. At any point in the semester, trust your intuition. If you have a concern about a student, perhaps they're just simply not even showing up to class, you have tried to connect with them, and you're not hearing from them, whether that's email or phone, they're just not responding, let us know. So all you have to do is fill out the form. The form, as Bets will, you'll hear from our Dean of Students coordinator, Bets. She will write back to you. She will tell you who on the care team is taking the lead, and they'll circle back to you with an update. The second intervention is campus-wide. So it is systematic because we want to pull all the pieces together. It could be that your student is maybe sporadically attending class, but still doing okay. But in other classes, there's a stronger pattern of missing classes. Or maybe they're not going to any of their classes and they're really at a dark place that we need to immediately reach out to them. The more we can pull together campus-wide information, the better our understanding of what their world looks like. So first quarter, just associate SOS. Anytime you hear SOS, just think first quarter verification. We are going to ask all faculty to tell us, not necessarily grades. We know sometimes you might have only even had 1 test or 1 assignment, but just yay or nay, are you concerned? Does it look like they're trending in the satisfactory direction, or are you wanting us to reach out actively to them? And that'll come, Joni, our registrar, who I'm sure you will hear from if you haven't already, will send you emails about that. And that usually occurs at the end of September. Beth and I will have the dates on one of our slides at the faculty retreat. So that's at the end of the first quarter. Then we also do midterm interventions. So that'll the halfway point. Just so you know why we have SOS, the first quarter one. Some people might ask, well, why do you have the first quarter one if they're, a few weeks later, you're going to ask me for the midterm? Well, 2 reasons. One, midterm is not soon enough. Again, we teach self-regulation and metacognition. We want our students to try different things. Well, when they're getting their grades at midterm and the course withdrawal deadline is usually only a week and a half, they don't have time to connect with the tutor, to connect with you all. That's for consultation during your office hours. They just don't have enough time to try different things and get feedback and see. So we want to help them make an informed choice. It gives us more time to intervene. And many of our students recover academically by midterm and are off our radar screen. Second, we want to help you not be fielding grade information all the time. So before SOS, coaches know best practice. They know about early academic intervention, and they were nudging our faculty, having students ask for grade verification, also knowing their athletic eligibility hinges on this. And it was, I wouldn't say disruptive, but faculty were just getting hit up what felt like, pretty routine, to where if we could pull it together in a single date, everyone got the information they needed, and it was, less frequent to activate your grade book and pull all of that. If you're unsure, if you want to know who on my staff serves as your point of contact, the top handout identifies. It is usually by division. I won't get into the weeds. I hope that at some point you can meet all of them. They're wonderful, want to partner with you. we are often, if you ever hear from us, I guess I'll end with this and then pass it to Beth. Please know if we ever reach out to you, like we provide to students engaged in academic recovery, we routinely meet with them. There are some students we meet weekly with, and sometimes we just want to verify what they've told us, or we're trying to assess the sense of urgency in some sort of action. If we ever reach out to you, please know we are only asking about behaviors. Grades are earned, they are not received. We are always going to support the policies of your classroom, and we are going to support your recommendations. We want to partner with you. We want to reinforce everything we know you are telling them when they reach out to you. So know that we are on your team. That doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, know that there's something that is amplified the reason why we're seeking that information. And sometimes we can't tell you, but know that it has likely something to do with the student's circumstances. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Beth.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll just kind of go off of what Billy talked through with the EARS program. So on the academic end, obviously, that's where we get a lot of our referrals from you guys. But then we also really use this as a campus-wide tool as well. So all the way down to our RAs, which here we call them Viking advisors. They submit EARS concerns, the Elman Center, dining services. It's really a place where if people are seeing a concern, they can fill out that form and we'll get that. Like Billy and I will get that, and then that can really help us determine, okay, what's really going on in this student's life. So if Billy's working or her staff is working with a student on an academic issue, and then I have maybe a roommate conflict, or maybe they're working out excessively, or they're having some sort of mental health issue, then we can kind of connect and say, okay, there's something going on here. So that's really just our point we always say from the lowest level of concern to kind of the top level of concern. So there's no EARS report. I would say fill it out, even if you're like, I don't really know if this is an issue. Because the worst that we would do is just kind of monitor. We wouldn't necessarily have to bring that student in. But if you're like, this just seems a little off, you can go ahead and submit that, and then we'll review those. So it's just a good way to get us the information. You can also call us too. If you just want to chat and say, I'm not really sure about this student, and then, you know, I can kind of do some further digging or work with Billy's team or Ben's team or whoever. So it's just kind of a good way for us to, again, intervene early. Like Billy said, that's really our goal. We want to avoid the crisis at the end. We want to intervene so that we don't get to that crisis moment. Jay, do you want me to hit on counseling services, or should I wait until the next month for that?
Yes, please. We had quite a few kind of discussions yesterday. I think a lot of it centered around anxiety for students, like current students, but then also kind of in relation to pandemic, COVID, remote learning, those sorts of things.
Yeah, so the EARS members, I guess, that's where it's helpful that we all work together as well, because if you're hearing students that are anxious, we can really get to their case manager and say, okay, check in with them. Let's see how they're doing. And then kind of refer them on, okay, is there another resource that we can put around them? I always tell my students, like, we have you here and we want to build the team around you. So who do we all need to pull in to kind of make sure that we're working through the anxiety or whatever the issue is. So yes, our counseling services, we have a partnership with Sioux Falls Psychological Services. So they're located right across the street from the seminary, from the library in the Sioux Falls Seminary building. So we have access to over 15 different licensed counselors, including I think they're at 2 psychologists now, that all see Augie students. So all of these services are covered under their student activity fee. So there's no added fee, there's no copay or insurance. We also don't have a limited number of sessions. which is very, very unique for the college setting. So we have students that go once a week for their entire 4 years here, including the summers. So we really, really lean on them for kind of that counseling, more that therapeutic setting when students are really struggling with anxiety, depression, a loss, those types of things. So again, that's simply they call over. The student can call the number and say, I'm an Augie student, and they'll say, great. And then they'll set them up with a therapist. If you have a student that doesn't feel comfortable calling, I make those calls all the time. So you can send the students to me. I know the therapist really well, so I can kind of help match with whatever the student is struggling with kind of the approach of the therapist. So feel free to send students my way. I can help, and I really help match, and then I give it over to them. We don't track students. That's also important. We don't know who goes. We don't know how many times they go. I know general numbers, but it's very confidential. So it's important to tell students their parents don't find out, their parents don't get a phone call. Obviously, if there's a safety concern, they let me know. If we're moving into the suicidal ideation, then I will respond, but it's really private, confidential. Many students don't want their professors knowing, they just want to take care of whatever they're struggling with. Great, that we would prefer that they do that. So that's counseling. And then I would just touch on the health. So we do have the campus clinic located here on campus. It's in a residence hall, Solberg Hall, and that's available to all students, actually faculty and staff as well. And so we are telling students to call the clinic nurse if they're experiencing any type of COVID symptoms or any general symptoms of anything. So that's really going to be a big resource for us. We use Sanford Health for our clinic provider. And so that's important that students just are calling the nurse, triaging their symptoms. And I think that is also going to help with the anxiety. Our nurse practitioner down there, out of the top 4 concerns she sees, anxiety and depression are 3 and 4. So she also sees students that are very, very anxious. And so she works kind of hand in hand with our counseling services as well. But then we have a team approach, really. The Dean of Students office here, between myself and Mark Blackburn, we work with the Success Center a lot, and Susan Bees. We work with Ben's team in IPO. We work with Pastor Ann in Campus Ministries. And then we work with faculty. Kind of like I said in my intro, I can't really do my job without you guys. So yeah, I'll give you a call, email, kind of see if I can figure out what's going on. And then we work really closely with athletics as well. That's been a good partnership for us, so that we can make sure that we're kind of hitting the whole student experience as well. So trying to think anything else. And we'll kind of go into a little bit more detail this afternoon as well for faculty retreat, but those are a few of the resources that students have access to right now, actually. So we can get them set up even before they get here so that they're ready to go.
Hey, Beth, can I ask a related question?
Yeah.
When we made the pivot to modified instruction, did we see an uptick in people being referred to Sioux Falls Psych?
We did. We increased 300 sessions throughout, from basically the time of last year until the end of the semester. And then when we went to this year, from like that spring break on, we were about 300 over what we were last year. So, and then they're doing all virtual as well. So they're going to continue the virtual setting. In the client relationship, it's really bad. It's not good to go in person to virtual to in person. So they're going to kind of stick virtual for now. So if you are having students struggling finding a confidential place, let me know, and I'll get them a space lined up so that they can do those virtual counseling sessions, because we understand if they're in the residence halls, that might be a little hard, but they're going to continue with that. So that way it's easy access. We don't have to kind of go back and forth and kind of hurt the counseling relationship. So
Thank you. I expected as much, and I thought we talked about it, so I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah. Any questions for me? Awesome.
I'll share just one other thing too about distress. And it's probably the thing that surprised me most when I started at my role here at Augustana. So I had worked at 5 other institutions, and I had been warned this, and I wouldn't say I was necessarily skeptical, but we have extremely high achieving students that have never received a B or C or let alone a D. And they will be distressed when they receive those grades. I hope that they're in your office talking to you about it, because I know that you will affirm and normalize that you know they can do this, and that grades are not everything, and certainly not permanent. You know, more than half the semester remains. Please know that there is a strong opportunity for intervention. When we did our regression analysis of factors that predicted persistence, this was one that was the top of the list. The students who have the biggest drop from their high school GPA to college, we are losing 3.0 students simply because they lack confidence and are feeling disappointed with their grades. So you'll hear Beth and I talk about that even at the, I won't talk too much about it during the faculty retreat, just in the spirit of time, but that is one population that as we think about the coming semester, that I guess is on my mind, because it's amplified now with COVID even. I mean, they're starting already anxious, so their ability to even cope with some of those grades is diminished. So feel free to send those students to us too if you sense the distress is really high. We can affirm their academic identity and their sense of confidence, as I know you will. I mean, it just takes a village. The more people they can hear this from, the better.
This is Marty. I work in a clinic. I'm a nurse practitioner. I work in a clinic in another city. And the university students that I see, the level of anxiety that these kids have is really remarkable. And so the resources that Clearly Augie has are great, because again, they're without their families, and they may have had a little bit of it before, and then you add COVID into it. But even more than depression, I really see, just that anxiety of trying to be perfect. As Belly mentioned, I'm perfect. Well, you don't have to be perfect. So those kinds of things. So anyway, I just kind of affirmation that, identifying those stressors in these kids and getting them help is so important, and having a system set up for that.
And one thing that we haven't talked about is towards the end of the semester, I think it's ASA puts together semester shutdown, don't they? And those are just activities, and I led a meditation session during it last time. And it was just stress relievers, going for a walk, doing something together. They were making cookies next door, which I thought was a little unfair to have me meditating and then everybody else making cookies next door. But those are the sorts of activities that are already part of our regular calendar that occur towards the end of the semester to help those students kind of cope with that time. So those were already there. I imagine we'll probably need 2 or 3 times as many sessions this year. Any questions for Beth or Billy before we move over to IPO? Okay. Thank you both. Ben, the floor and screen is yours.
Yeah, are you seeing what looks like to be a PowerPoint presentation, I hope?
Yes. Yep.
And not my ugly email inbox? Okay. Very good. Well, I probably have too much information here, so I'll skip over a few things, but my intent here is to give you an overview of the variety of things that we do in the IPO. And like Beth and Billy's area, at least from my end, I think of the IPO as an office that really has tentacles into virtually everything else on campus, right? In part because of our role in advising international students in particular, and the way that in some cases, intercultural and visa issues that are unique to international students interplay with things like employment and academic advising and housing and any variety of factors. So, so a very cross-departmental sort of entity, at least from my vantage point. So here's just, and this is a gross over generalization perhaps, but so we sort of have a centralized model when it comes to international programs here at Augustana. So my office is charged with study away programs, advising program development. We work very closely with faculty on developing study away programs, if that happens to be of interest to any of you. And I'll talk about that in a bit greater detail later on. This is partly why I sort of have two separate but related responsibilities in the International Programs Office as well as in enrollment. So we've kind of blended at least the international student recruitment function now with the enrollment team. 1 foot in that realm with the domestic enrollment team and 1 foot still in the IPO realm, because I think it's important for our recruiters to continue to follow current international students so they're able to tell that story to new students out on the road, at least in the circumstance that we can go travel overseas. Not much of that happening right now, unfortunately, as you can imagine. International student advising, we've both Billy and Beth talked a bit about this. I'll talk through some details and kind of give you an overview of what our international student population looks like, just so you have a sense of that as you walk into your classrooms here. Customized inbound programs, I won't talk too much about this, but we are offering, at least under normal circumstances, some of our overseas high school and university partners the opportunity to come for even short periods of time to do kind of a special topics class over 3 weeks, those kinds of things, in order to generate some revenue in a creative way, but also as an enrollment vehicle, particularly for high school students. Just like on the domestic side, if we can get international high school students to visit campus, even in an extended way like this, it makes it more likely that they'll enroll. So you'll get the sense as I talk probably that we try to be a bit entrepreneurial in the International Programs Office, and we're very active in partnership development and these kinds of things. And so one thing that I'm interested to know from you all is if you have interests overseas or connections. I know we have at least one international faculty member on this call. The International Programs Office wants to know that and partner with you if there are opportunities with some of your connections overseas. We do some programming on campus, as you might imagine. One kind of standing thing that I'll just mention briefly is typically on Fridays at 4 o'clock, we do something called the Rendezvous program, at which a new or different international student from a different country every week gets up and presents about home, some aspect of home in essence. We're going to do that a little bit differently this year because of the pandemic, so more to come on that, but that's just one example. And then, you know, particularly now when we're traveling a little bit less frequently, we're leaning into this concept of trying to help faculty, in this case, think a little bit more seriously about the concept of internationalization. So, for instance, how can we bring in international examples to the average course that's just taught right here on campus? How can we help you make a connection with one of our university partners overseas who might guest lecture in one of your courses, knowing that you know, many of your students might not be able to study abroad in the immediate term. So we're very, to the extent that you are interested in those kinds of conversations, I'm personally very interested in having them with you and talking about how we can make it happen and who we might connect you with to help enhance some of the on-campus only types of courses. So here's my team. We have a 5-person team, 2.5, I'm the half, 2.5 are kind of based in the International Programs Office. The first 3 there, Aaron Kane, who's been here for quite a while, as have I, and Heather Reed. Those 2 in particular really serve as our primary international student advisors. Aaron does a lot of study abroad advising under normal circumstances. Heather is also involved in these customized programs that I mentioned. And then the other 2.5, Wade, Sewell, and myself, are based physically in the admissions suite in the administration building, and work primarily, of course, with prospective students and recruitment. Okay, so just to give you a very general sense, again, I'm kind of I come out of the enrollment realm, and so I'm numbers focused in some ways. And this 2020 column is estimated at this point. As you'd expect, we have a little bit more movement in our enrolling class than we might in other years, of course. But you can kind of see our international student trend line there. So at its peak, we were maybe at about 8 to 10% international students. That's where we would like to get back to under new normal circumstances, hopefully here in a year or two, if things return to normal. But we have seen a decline. That probably doesn't surprise anybody. I'm actually very happy with the fact that we may have 80 international students on campus, or at least 80 enrolled international students. A handful are overseas, kind of stuck there and studying online for a period of time until they can return. But I think retention and new student enrollments on the international side could have been far worse than this, actually, considering the circumstances. So yes, disappointing to my office in some ways, but could be worse in some other ways. And then in terms of study abroad participation, I think this is one of the things that Augustana is known for locally. Certainly it's something we talk about a lot with prospective students, and something like 53% of our American students study abroad someplace by the time they graduate. And that's more than 5 times the national average, which is only about 10 or 11% typically. So that's something that we certainly hang our hat on. And you can see some pretty strong participation numbers there annually. Typically in 2019, 2020, the pandemic hit in March, basically. This number would have been in the 250 to 270 range. It was a very strong year until the pandemic hit. And of course, this year, we don't really know what's going to be possible. We've canceled, in fact, our J-term, our January term study abroad programs for the year, and kind of fingers crossed about spring semester. So we'll see where that ends up. And we do, my office does oversee and assist faculty with domestic programs. Really, in some ways, study away is preferred terminology to study abroad, because we do get involved with study away, meaning including domestic study off-campus programs as well. And so we may, at least in the immediate term, pivot towards more of those kinds of things that may be more possible for the next year or so. I mixed in some photos here. I love that during International Education Week in the fall, we hang up flags from all of the countries that are represented on campus. It's one of my favorite weeks. It's just a nice photo op from the outside when the lights are on of the Commons. So for those on campus, you'll get to see that soon. So again, just kind of some demographics so you know who's walking into your classroom. Typically in a normal semester, we might have 30, we've been closer to 40 countries represented for most of the last 5 years, let's say. This fall, at least for those on campus physically, there will be, we think, 24 countries represented. So you can see the list there, pretty diverse, maybe not necessarily the ones that you would immediately think of. Although China in particular is overrepresented often at most other institutions. That hasn't always necessarily been the case here. The 3 that are bolded here are the ones that are most represented at Augustana, our top 3 sending countries, so to speak. So it's quite likely that you might have a student from China, Ethiopia, or Vietnam in your classes, particularly if you teach in the STEM fields. We're heavy on international student interest in things like computer science, our dual degree engineering program, and a few others. But you may have some of these students kind of irrespective of where you teach. Norway would be the other country that is often heavily represented, particularly from non-degree or exchange students. But this year, our exchange partners in Norway have said across the board, we aren't sending anybody any place, just like Augustana has said. And so sadly, in some ways, we have relatively few Norwegian students this year. Again, just some photos of students. So they're represented, in fact, is a student from Norway on the left, two from Ethiopia, and a Spaniard. And this is our club soccer team is heavily represented by international students, as you might expect. So lastly, on the international student side, oh no, I apologize, there are a couple more slides, I think, but at least as far as demographics go, 65 of these students, so most of them are on campus, 10 are studying online from home. We're still helping a handful register. We've got some late Lucy's, and that's not limited to international students, although it feels like it at some points, at least in my office. Most of these students are undergraduate students. I think that there are only 4 graduate students at the moment. And we did have just a very small new incoming class this year. Typically that number, including non-degree students, might be 50 to 70. So we're, you know, again, we're disappointed on one hand, but could have been 0. In fact, at certain points I thought it might be. So the fact that we have 15 new students is positive. And then, you know, just to give you a sense, there's a great deal of diversity even among these 15 students, just like there will be in our freshman class at large, right? So there's a handful of student athletes. In this case, part of the reason that these international students were able to come was because they never left. Several were at US high schools, and of course, that helps a bit with acculturation. You know, they've been here longer, of course, than somebody that's just fresh off the airplane and is going through culture shock and these kinds of things. Some third culture kids that, you know, have kind of moved around, some talented musicians. So just like the freshman class at large, a great deal of diversity. And then, as I mentioned, we do get some of these typically non-degree students, a good number. These particularly fall into the nursing and teacher education departments, but again, could take kind of a liberal arts or gen ed class in any one of your departments, depending on their interests. So, photo of some of our students from last year. Usually we take all these students out to the Black Hills during orientation. That's one of the highlights of the year. So just very quickly, some advising tips and tricks and topics that you might come into if you have international student advisees or students just in general in your classes. And of course, my office plays a core role in advising students on all of these things and can help you and partner with you. And of course, we do partner with Billy and Beth very closely on a number of these topics as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I don't expect that you will remember these details. I just want to give you kind of some of the basics to plant the seed, but please don't hesitate to reach out if you have a question along any of these lines for international students. So just very quickly, according to the US government, international students must be full-time. There's no such thing as studying part-time if you're an international student, except in your final semester. If it ends up mathematically that you only need 2 classes your final semester, that's okay. But otherwise, students must be full-time. There are a few things that the IPO is charged with keeping in terms of contact information. And we're kind of the liaison, I guess, between the university and the US federal government. And so anytime a student changes a major, has an address change, or anytime employment is involved, we have to be involved in that process. So even if you just have an advisee that mentions to you, hey, I'm looking for a job, please, please, please let that be a trigger. I need to send Ben a heads up that, hey, student X is interested in employment. And certainly in that example, Billy's team becomes involved quite often as well. But there are some technical things that we have to help the student take care of so that they don't run afoul of immigration requirements. They can get into trouble in a hurry. Some of it that is sort of irreversible or very difficult to reverse at the point that they're in trouble. So that's why I mentioned this to you. So employment has to be related to a student's field of study. For international students, so if they're a biology major, they can't go work at McDonald's unless they're doing testing on hamburgers or something like that, but has to be some connection to their academic field. And this is something that's new, but you will see international students that have, I think, Billy, is it 297? Is that the prefix? I forget.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I guessed right. But each of your departments, you may or may not have known this, has an international student-specific course for 0 credits, because we have to say this is integral, their employment is integral to their education. That's how we sort of get around immigration requirements that otherwise would bar international students from working. So we can talk more about that if you have questions. Academic integrity and systems issues. Just to be very brief about this, I would invite any questions that you might have, but some of our students, I'll pick on maybe our Asian students just because this is where it comes up most frequently perhaps, but those that come from more collectivist cultures, of course the US is a very individualistic culture by contrast to many cultures overseas. And so to pick on even our Chinese students in particular that come from one of the most collectivist cultures on the opposite end of the spectrum, to them, working in a group is second nature, right? If they're assigned what to us might be an individual product or project, sort of naturally, we might assume that it's just an individual product or project rather. To a group of brand new Chinese students, they don't make the same assumption and may work in groups to address it and turn in identical or near identical work. And of course, we spend lots and lots and lots of time addressing this with students during orientation, but you can't undo a full lifetime of being sort of acculturated to that process in a 2-hour orientation session, even as much as we try to reinforce it. So we ask faculty to help us reinforce it and to be not lenient, but to be understanding when it happens for the first time. It's one thing if it happens in a student's first semester. At that point, they may or may not know, and they might have an excuse. By their 3rd year, there's no excuse. At that point, they know. And the same thing happens, of course, with plagiarism. In some cultures, it's actually seen as doing the original author, honoring them in a sense by quoting something verbatim, whether or not they've actually cited the source. And so we talk a great deal again about citations, working with the Writing Center and so forth. But these things come up. And so long story short, the IPO, of course, is very willing to work with you in counseling students if and when there's opportunity to do that, as opposed to being punitive, although the punitive stuff also comes into play in certain cases, and we will be involved when that happens as well. Lastly on this slide, and then I promise I'll move on to some more exciting study abroad stuff, but sometimes there are some English issues. I have to say though that with this group of 15 students, this brand new group of 15 students, their English is really, really good by contrast sometimes to other groups. I guess with larger groups of students, sometimes there's a larger range of abilities. So I expect less issues with this in the fall semester. But here at Augustana, at least historically, we've really left it up to kind of faculty discretion about whether to make accommodations for students. Sometimes students might ask for a dictionary, a Spanish to English dictionary on an exam. If the question isn't so much whether or not they understand the content, but more kind of technical vocabulary that they might know better in their home language and could better articulate in English if they have a dictionary. So that kind of thing is left up to you as an individual instructor. Again, probably students have more of an excuse, or at least from my vantage point, I would encourage you to be more lenient in a student's first year, compared to years 3 and 4, where by that point we hope that they've fully acculturated and may need to rely less on dictionaries and other types of aids. And of course, if it's something that isn't due to English, if there's some other type of disability, then in that case we should work with Billy and Beth and team to access other types of support services, just like we would with any domestic student. And of course, we have international students that have some of those kinds of disabilities as well. So I should pause there. I know that was already, I'm only halfway done, but that was a fire hose of information. But any international student questions before I move on to some study abroad stuff? Okay. I'll keep going here. I just included, this is my humble brag about our amazing students. We have, of course, we've got successful, super successful American students. And I don't hope I'm not setting unrealistic expectations, because clearly not everybody is a Rhodes Scholar. But Kofi is one of our most recent all-stars. Darwin, many of you, at least the continuing employees, will know, kind of a local all-star. Our first, I think, international student homecoming king as well. Shatong, we've got many examples like this, but you know, one of these students that was admitted into practically every Ivy League and other PhD program. Luca, an international student from Kenya, who was the ASA president, our first, as far as I know, international student president in the history of Augustana. A Covenant Award winner from last year. Kirtano is kind of another all-star. Jonas, a student from Norway. The University of Singapore is kind of a top 50 global institution, another all-star. So again, this doesn't happen for everybody, but we have pretty good international students. So humble brag on that front. Okay, finally, study away. Okay, so I mentioned 53% of students go abroad. Where you come in, maybe, potentially, is we do have lots of faculty-led study abroad opportunities during J-term, spring break, and also the summer. For us, J-term tends to be the most popular time frame for students to go and faculty to go. So if we have, you know, just to use easy kind of roundish numbers, if we had 250 students go abroad during a typical year, maybe almost 200 of those would go during J-term. Another handful might have a full fall or spring semester experience, another handful during spring break, and another handful during summer. But J-term by far and away is kind of the window that's most popular. And maybe it has something to do with the weather in South Dakota. For those of you that are here, the chance to get away potentially to a warmer climate is attractive, of course. Something like, I'm equally as proud of this statistic, that something like 60 current AU faculty, I may need to adjust this now with some recent faculty retirements, but at least as of a few months ago, we had 60 current faculty that have led study away programs. So not quite half, but almost. And the reason that I'm equally proud of that fact is just because that is the single reason that we have 52 or 53% study abroad participation among students. It's because folks like you either lead them yourselves, or you make it a priority during your advising sessions to mention, hey, you should really think about this, student X. You would benefit from an overseas intercultural experience. So my office really tries our best to liaise as closely as possible as we can with you all as professors to help students find these kinds of opportunities. There are fine arts and athletic performance tours. We've had a history, particularly in music, the choir and band and orchestra, of doing music tours. And so anytime you can get a whole ensemble of 50 students to go abroad, of course, that enhances our participation numbers. And the same way with athletic teams. We've got a ways to go with that. But last year, for instance, Coach Huber from the baseball program took 50 student athletes to the Dominican Republic, both for an academic course as well as for some competition. And so this is another way for faculty to get involved sometimes, is to teach on kind of a unique experience like that. And then these are not faculty led. We don't at the moment, although in my dream world, we'll build towards this over time. But we don't at the moment have any faculty-led full semester or year programs, but rather we work with, as I mentioned earlier, some of our university exchange partners overseas, and also some third-party providers that I can talk about later if you have questions about that. But it really helps us expand sort of our network of potential study abroad destinations for students. These kinds of photos give me wanderlust anyway, but particularly now when we can never, or when we can't travel quite as much. But here's one of our recent students, Chloe Bartles, who studied in Lima, Peru. I think this is up at Cusco. We do a photo contest every year and collect some of these amazing photos from students. But in terms of advising, please, as you think about your future student advising checklist, you may not have that many advisees just yet, but please, please, please add this to your checklist. Please mention this as an opportunity. We don't expect that you're going to be an expert, particularly at the beginning, but just mentioning it to a student can be all they need to send them to go speak with my colleague or with me, but my colleague Erin Kane in particular is charged with advising our study abroad students. And she's a walking like encyclopedia of information about, oh, you want to study underwater basket weaving in Fiji. I have the program for you. She literally knows stuff like that. So she's a good resource for you when you have students that ask even about kind of esoteric sorts of things. And if you're interested in this, you can explore that third link that I posted there. I'm happy to send this presentation to you afterwards if it's useful. But that's kind of our study abroad database of all of the approved programs, both externally as well as those that we've approved internally as far as faculty-led programs go. And if you really want travel wanderlust, I dare you to follow us on IPO, Augie IPO on Instagram. There's some pretty incredible photos. And we post a lot of international student stuff there as well. So it's a good way to get a sense of what students are up to on campus. This is a photo from one of our longest running faculty-led courses, started by a woman named Sandra Looney from the English department, who's kind of a faculty legend dating back more than 50 years, but it continues to be taught by contemporary faculty. So just one example of a course that goes almost every January to India. Okay, so 2 or 3 slides left. This is maybe the most interesting or the most fun stuff for you at least. If you have dreamt about teaching abroad, I have a deal for you. We will help you design your dream course. This is maybe the thing on the study abroad side I like best about my job is kind of dreaming with faculty about how to design the dream course that you've always wanted to help students do overseas. So just a couple of kind of basic details. Be thinking about a partner potentially. Courses are typically co-led. That's in part for risk management purposes. We want 2 adult leaders. These days, students, as you would imagine, are box checkers. You know, they want to know, they might have always dreamt of going with a faculty member to Spain, but they also want to know which Sophia box does this course check, or which part of my major does this course check, and they're far more likely to go if it does check one of these boxes. So as you dream, also please be dreaming about which box it might check. That will help it go for sure. There's sort of a proposal process. There's I'm the convener, I guess, of an otherwise faculty committee called the Global Education and Off-Campus Committee, another acronym for you, GEOC, that serves a risk management role and also reviews on behalf of the university course proposals for study abroad courses. And this happens at the very beginning before the proposal goes to the Sophia Committee or the Curriculum Council for kind of a final stamp of approval. And so this is the first stop, and there are lots of seasoned study abroad professors and course leaders there that will help you, in addition to my team, kind of massage proposals that will work here at Augustana. This process starts a great distance into the future, in part because of just how long it takes to book airfares and do our due diligence with risk management and that sort of thing. So it's not like you can propose a course today, even under normal circumstances, and lead it this January. It's really almost 2 years out that we need to start talking. So if you want to talk now, the course at the earliest might be in January. What would that be? 2023, I think, is the next time we're sort of talking. So just be aware of that. Perhaps most interesting for you, we do have a limited number of travel grants that we award to faculty for new course development. So if part of the deal is that, hey, I'm really interested in underwater basket weaving in Fiji, but I've never been to Fiji and I need to go to set up the course and make some contacts and these kinds of things, we have a fund that you can apply for to do that very thing, in fact. And so I can help you with those kinds of proposals. And again, like I said, we'll help you with all of the logistical elements. Erin Kane in my office, again, is a wizard when it comes to the Delta and United and American group travel desk and all of those related things. So we can help with that part of it so you can focus on the kind of academic elements and just dreaming about what the best course would entail. Lastly, on this topic, we are interested, just like we are as a university, I think, in diversifying our enrollment in a general sense and our faculty and staff. We're also interested in this in my office, of course, when it comes to study away. So historically, we've been largely Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand focused. Increasingly a little bit more Latin America as people realize how practical Spanish is in particular. But we're also very interested in exploring the rest of the globe too. So if you have an interest in Asia or Africa or other parts of the world, we're really interested in talking with you about those, because I think there's going to be increasing student demand, and at least strategically, we want to diversify our portfolio a bit as well. So here's just a list. There's maybe a couple in here that didn't actually run or make, but this just gives you a sense of the diversity, I think, of the disciplines, the locations, the lengths of time, and also will give you kind of a, this isn't comprehensive, of course, but at least from last year, a list of some faculty mentors that you might also go talk to and say, hey, I'm interested in teaching a study abroad course. Tell me about your experience, kind of a deal. Okay, last slide. Other ways to partner with us. So I focus primarily on international student stuff and education abroad, or study away, again, a better term. Those are probably the two primary ways that the IPO might partner with you as a faculty member, but we have a few other things going on, as you'd expect. So there are a fair number of international student focus clubs, kind of regionally or country focus clubs. So for instance, there's the African Student Union that one faculty member from biology helps advise, for instance. So you could get involved with an interest or region-specific club that way. Friday Rendezvous, I mentioned, we do lots of other campus programming. Again, we want to know about your interests and connections overseas. Friendship Family Program, we match all of our international students if they want to, we don't force them, I guess, with an American family. And a lot of them are working here at Augustana, not all, but if you would like to host an international student just on occasion for a meal, again, under normal circumstances maybe, or even, you know, just for a family outing once or twice a semester. It doesn't have to be an overwhelming sort of commitment, but students benefit from that, as do families, I think, from kind of learning about another culture. So contact me if you're interested in that. We know some of you travel. We might call on you from time to time if we have international students that are interested in your specific discipline. So we invite your help with those efforts, just as we do on the domestic side, for that matter. Internationalizing your on-campus course, we talked about. Customized programs, I talked about a little bit, particularly if some of our partners are asking for things in your area. I might reach out to see if you could deliver a 2-hour, and Sharon actually did this for a group of Chinese students that was here last January, right? So kind of a 1 or 2 hour special topics lecture as a one-off.
So much fun. Yeah, if I were, I cannot sing the praises of that program high enough. It was one of the most enjoyable teaching moments or experiences that I have ever had. It was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
And I had to completely change everything because we discovered inside that the students didn't have quite the English skill that we thought they were going to. And so it forced a complete revision of everything, which turned out to be a beautiful opportunity rather than an obstacle. It was a wonderful experience.
Very good. Thank you for that vote of confidence. And then lastly, the IPO last year with the good work of a fantastic student intern work study student started a newsletter that we're hoping we can figure out how to sustain this year, but just kind of on all topics international happening on campus. And so if you have an interest, or if you yourself come from overseas and have a perspective, we'd love to feature you in our newsletter on behalf of the International Programs Office. So just a few ideas. I hope it whets your appetite. I hope there's one thing that you can take away from this that you're interested in partnering with us on. But with that, I apologize for you guys. I can't even imagine you have this so many times over with all of us. But I would be happy to answer any questions that you have about international stuff at Augustana. Or if not, do we have one other person, Jay? I don't know what the schedule is.
So we have two, but we're going to move the CTS to another day. I know how to find these folks if I need to.
I'm sorry, it's my fault.
It's quite all right. It's part of the gig. So if there aren't any questions, then we're going to move over to Darcy.
Can I jump in with one other question? Or I guess, have we, do you all know how to find students' contact information if you need it? Have we talked about the Buzzbook? Jay, do they know about the Buzzbook?
Yes.
Oh, good. How about the portal advising features?
So we did initial portal stuff yesterday, but that was more on the HR side. And tomorrow, Cheryl will walk them through some like admitting a student, adding a student in the portal, that sort of thing.
Oh, good. Okay. Phenomenal.
Okay. Should I go ahead, Jay?
Yes, please.
Okay, am I sharing? I just want to make sure you can see. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, I will be brief on this one. This is, I know this won't apply to everyone directly. You might not have experience in it directly, but just so you know what we're doing for first year students, we have a first year seminar program, which we are using as a way to help students see their education as more than just about eventually getting a job, but being broadly educated in the liberal arts. And so first year seminars or first year experiences are emerging best practices in higher education. And most institutions do have some form of this, although most other institutions that I've come in contact with have one semester mainly of orientation. It's not really very academic. It's just there to help students acclimate to campus. And they have been shown to definitely improve retention and academic success. And I think Billy kind of touched on that a bit too, like how much our retention has improved. And FYS is a main part of that. But Augustana, we're a bit unique because our first year seminar program, the first semester is very academic, and it's integrated with the issues of orientation for the first semester. So it's 4 credits, 3 academic, and then 1 credit with student life. And then in the spring course that we will have, that's 1 credit, we're going to have students meet once a week and focus on vocation. And so I'll say a little bit more about what all these elements are as we go on. So what your students, if you have freshman students, they will be in FYS 110 this fall. And the focus for them is critical thinking and writing. This is to build skills they will need, not just for their next 4 years, but after graduation, right? These are fundamental skills to liberal arts and being broadly educated. And part of this is they write at least 2 papers with peer editing and revision. And there's also argumentation with it. And then critical thinking aspects. And it's quite an intense course with all of that, as well as learning basics of grammar, mechanics, spelling. So we're trying to prepare them very well for your classes in terms of writing and critical thinking. And then the student life focus is very important as well. It's about transitioning to college and, learning, what it means to be at Augustana and what it means to be an Augustana student. And so we emphasize to them the core values, right, that are part of Augustana so that they understand like what the purpose of being an Augustana student is, and to move their ideas of education again more towards citizenship, and more than just jobs, but more like being good citizens, good participants in the community. And then they also write 3 journals, and this sort of connects with what Billy was talking about with sort of early alert and making sure students are okay. The journals sort of allow professors to see how students are doing, how they're adjusting, and to alert people if there might be any issues that we're seeing in those journals. And then FYS 112 in the spring will focus on vocation. It will meet once a week as a class and discuss what vocation and calling means, again, to move students hopefully past the idea of job and into a purpose in life, a calling in life. And it will also envelop teaching students about diversity and core values, and hopefully it will eventually encompass an e-portfolio in which students collect their work from across the curriculum over 4 years, including extracurricular work, so that they can sort of see the connections of their liberal arts education, that again, they are more than just checking off boxes, they are becoming broadly educated, and they can see how knowledge fits in different disciplines and how they connect. It's also something that in a practical sense is being something that's desired by employers. They would like to see something with more depth. They'd like to see students show them how broadly educated they are rather than just, a resume. And so we're hoping that a portfolio like that will help students understand their own education and be able to talk about it and be able to show people in the community that experience, their broad education. And outside of the classroom, students attend things like a major minors fair to get them to think about other disciplines perhaps that they might be interested in, especially if they're exploring students, they're undeclared. An employer expo is where we have many employees come to Augustana, and Billy can speak more towards this too, but it's a chance for freshmen to sort of be able to start to interact with employers, practice like how to talk to employers, and even hopefully start to make some connections with them, even internships and that sort of thing. So that's what encompasses the spring semester. So why did we create an FYS program? Overall, again, it's to help students build a foundation of skills that are necessary, whatever career or vocation they choose. I was just speaking with 2 new admissions counselors yesterday about FYS and Sophia, our Gen Ed program. And I said to them, COVID has shown everything can change very quickly. And you need to be, I think Augustana offers that education where students can move and do different things and have different options, especially when the world can change overnight, right? And so that's part of what we're trying to do there. And then students also do arrive with varying degrees of knowledge, experience, and abilities. So we're trying to get a first semester, especially with writing and thinking, where we can kind of get to students right then and give them like, here is what you need in terms of writing for college and beyond, and and try to get them kind of brought up into a similar sort of level, if you will. And then we're hoping obviously that this will prepare for better success in college and success after graduation, which is also part of our retention efforts. Again, FYS, as I keep emphasizing as the director, and I was telling the admissions counselors this, I really want this to rewrite a narrative about higher ed, that we have become such a society about job, 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 and that's important, of course, you know, but education should be important in and of itself, right? That we shouldn't be just about like one goal with this, but it's about being a better human being, a better citizen. Again, preparing for futures like what happened right now that you can't foresee. It's the broadly educated person that will be best able to navigate those kinds of waters. So who teaches in this? It's instructors from all disciplines. It's a shared program, and to be a foundation in the liberal arts, we make it so that it is cross-disciplinary, right? And it really emphasizes to everyone that skills in writing, communication, critical ethical thinking, all of these things are important to any major, any discipline. It shouldn't be like, well, you know, I'm a chemistry major, so I don't need to take English. It's like, no, we all, you know, these are all very interconnected, and we want students and faculty as well, and the community to be able to see that. I'm glad we have the support of our provost, Colin Irvine, with this, that FYS is actually probably the most important class that students can take and instructors can teach, because this sets the foundation for what goes after it. And so it rather than just being a thing to check off, it's actually quite important. And again, we want to shift this narrative away from a hyper focus on, you know, the majors, right? Like to more foundational knowledge, again, that allows everyone to be adaptive, good citizens, no matter what happens. And I think, you know, our society needs now adaptive, good citizens more than ever before. For the subjects, what we do is we have instructors choose a topic through which they focus these foundational skills. So we have a core curriculum, but we allow instructors to use a topic they're interested in, and that hopefully would interest students too, right? To sort of serve as the vehicle for teaching the foundational skills. And again, the topics and course titles are designed to pique students' interest and allow for critical and ethical inquiry into a specific subject. So, for example, some FYS courses this fall are fecal matters, the sanitation crisis. That's been a very popular course for many years now, taught by Dr. Danny Gerling. Dr. Cecilia Miles in biology teaches hacking the human genome, which is also very popular with students. And extremely popular has been Dr. Mike Nitz's Truth is Out There Conspiracy Theories, which I mean, he'll have a wealth of things to teach, I'm sure, this semester. And he is from communication. So it's just some examples of some of the really interesting topics that we have. We prepare students to teach, teachers to teach. Each new FYS instructor is required to attend training for what they will teach. So the fall FYS training takes place in the spring, and we help everyone learn, you know, the basics of teaching writing, teaching critical thinking. So no one is expected to teach this class just off the cuff. We give people all the templates, all the ways of doing this course, and lots of preparation and ongoing support. So that is my quick spiel on FYS. So if you have any questions or anything anyone here wants to add, that'd be great. Okay. All right.
Excellent. Thank you, Darcy. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Billy, for joining us today. Thank you also, Sharon. We'll see Sharon on tomorrow morning to go through exponential leadership and then kind of Canvas / Moodle support. Thank you all for this morning. I will compress and send out this video probably within the next hour or so. It's been, knock on wood, YouTube's been working with me as of late, so go figure. I will see you all at the faculty retreat. If anything comes up between now and then, feel free to reach out. I'll be sitting right here, maybe eating my lunch. So have a good rest of your morning. Good to see you.
Nice to meet you.